Hi all, let's make an easy to use D10 system. Sorry, I haven't had time for a haircut. I've been busy. Okay, so this system is called the Tri-Stat system. This is your D10. This is the super version, so it uses the D10. Okay, the D10 is super easy to use. Why are we using a D10? If you're making your own system, the D10 is perfect. Why? Because we all use base 10, and the metric system uses base 10 as well. It's much easier than the imperial system. Empirical? Whatever. So, basically, you have a range from 1 to 10 or 0 to 9. That's the first thing you need to pick when you're using this. Next thing you need to choose is what sort of stat system you use. And this has 4 different attributes. Let me get there. Okay. Strength, dexterity, intelligence, and spirit. Strength, intelligence, dexterity, spirit. Body, mind, and soul. You have a bit more information with this one. And it's different enough from strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, constitution, then it's different enough not to fall into that category. So picking your attributes matter. So step 1, choose your die type. Step 2, choose how the mechanic works and whether it's a roll under or over system. Next, pick your attributes. After you have your dice, the style that you're using to determine outcome, and you have your stats, you're ready to start the process. Okay, so you want people to create their own worlds, but you want to use generic information and aspects. And so D&D, the 3.5, 3.0, and 5th edition utilizes the standard 10 as a +0. So a completely average person will have no advantage or disadvantage towards doing something. However, utilizing a D10, and if you want to roll over, that's good for power play. If you want to roll under, you can't risk your modifiers becoming too large, or there's no challenge. So therein lies another problem. Where do you want your challenge to come from? And rolling dice is not enough. There's no advantage to having a system that all outcomes are based on dice. So Numenera solves this by letting you players expend their attributes. They have strength, agility, and spirit, or intelligence. Yeah, strength, dexterity, and intelligence in that system. But at the same time, each of those is a health pool, and then there are stats, or status effects, that get in the way of that. Now, utilizing a general stamina system is better because you have one thing to keep track of, the stamina. And I don't know about you, but when I watch Gandalf doing this in the Lord of the Rings because he's exhausted, then I'm like, oh, okay, he obviously had some personal cost to pay for that spell. It makes sense. You have to prove your worthiness of casting the spell, and it's draining. Which is why he comes riding with a sword later. He's like, that's part of the process, right? So even in a soft magic system, there's got to be some cost. And if you are utilizing hit point burn, Do you need healing spells then? Because hit point burn for healing spells is kind of contradictory, because you're like, oh, if I recover 4 hit points for every 3 I spend, I just continuously heal because there's no consequence eventually. Do you not be able to heal yourself? Okay, so you need to think about those aspects too. So choose your dice type, choose your stats, choose your dice mechanic, and then have your attributes related to the dice you are using. That's highly important, because the D20 system does not really work that well. What? Really? Yeah, because if you always have a 50% chance to do anything, oh, is it 10 or higher? Like, that's not flavor. But on the other hand, if you use the system like in Numenera, where you're still using a D20, and then every 3 is a next step or stage, it just becomes more complicated. We don't want complicated. So I would say the stamina system makes more sense, and that's for player characters. For the GM, I would utilize something like the Doom Pool from Conan 2D20, or, you know, and that's not to say that you're limiting the Dungeon Master or Game Master from utilizing any additional abilities. For those, go to the GM intrusions. If you're out of your pool, start rewarding players if you want to do more and more messed up stuff. So use a hybrid. Oh, look, you did something stupid. I have Doom. Okay, you still have stamina. You can use that ability. Oh, you want to use that ability without stamina? Well, I'm generating Doom. And if you want to do something as the GM, just be like, okay, you guys have been playing smart, so I'm still going to do this really bad thing. You guys, how does 4 XP sound? Like, or 1 XP, or whatever it is in Numenera. And then, I like that. No, I somehow nullify that. And you give players narrative choice over those things. So this isn't a very in-depth system. It depends. Do you want to play science fiction, fantasy? Do you want to play modern? Do you want to play cybernetics? Do you want to do Wild West? Your choices have to be in line with your game design. So figure out your setting, or the general type of setting. And going for a universal system is the worst choice you can make. Why do I say that? Because there are already universal systems out there. And they do not do anything as well as the settings you would like to implement. So by utilizing a simple system and then coming up with rules specifically for your Wild West setting, for your general fantasy setting, for your science fiction setting. Okay, let's not call it a science fiction setting. You have a cyberpunk-like setting. You also have a space opera setting, and then you have your Star Trek-like setting. So science fiction and general fantasy, and then you have sword and sorcery. Create different rules that govern the mentality of what your system is capable of. If you want a general system, because your basic outline needs to function with all of this expanded content. How prevalent is magic? You know, and then what I would do personally is I wouldn't necessarily flesh out all of these other rules. I would pick the rules I like the best, right? Well, instead of cybernetic enhancements, they work just like cybernetic enhancements, but they're runes that you literally slot into your body to give them power. Okay, if I have the cybernetic enhancement rules, I would then use that to convert it to my rune installation. And does it give me an emissive glow? Does it give me any other additional powers? And then say I have a wizard, but this wizard exists in a modern setting. Okay, that's kind of boring because, I mean, we have Doctor Strange already, and you get to the Gonzo stuff with the Doctor Strange mentality, and not the good Gonzo necessarily. And this is nothing against Marvel or whatever, but it's hard to maintain that realistic balance you need to make decision calls instantly. So pull yourself back. So do you want high fantasy? Maybe not. Okay. Maybe you want your sword and sorcerer, and then the fantasy, the magical aspect works like that rune installation like I was talking about. So imagine you have Conan the Barbarian, but he's literally installing runes into himself to gain power. Okay, and maybe it's not traditional power, maybe it's some sort of evolutionary change over time. And maybe there's a certain price to pay to extract this power. Maybe, say you have this Conan the Barbarian like character, but he's a cleric of his god, right? And the runes, when installed, like, they absorb part of the experience points he would normally be given. Then he's got to go on a pilgrimage to take this power out of him and then install it in this facility or building, a temple, if you will. So he has temporary powers granted by the runic installation process. But by achieving what he's attempting to do, he's gaining more power. And once again, let's go back to the D10. Then we got to decide how powerful can this be. And if you're using a D10, I would not suggest more than a 3 for an advantage or a disadvantage, because that's 30% of what this is. 30%. So say you need to roll at least a 7 in most areas. If you have the 30% advantage, 60% of your rolls will succeed. If you have a 30% disadvantage and you need a 7, 1 of your rolls is going to succeed. Because if you roll a 10 minus 3, that's 7. That is why it is important to determine that. And no matter what you're doing, you need to base a reasonable number that is possible before you can even come up with this expanded setting idea. So if you're this Conan-like character, Conan doesn't get along with magic, but say he's some sort of cleric, not in the D&D sense, but he's there to do this, and say he's got to meditate each day at a minus 3 disadvantage in order to properly allocate the rune. Now, let's say he gets an advantage for his spirit. Okay, so he's got a +2. Okay, so he's got -3 +2, so a -1, and he's got to get at least a 7. 8, 9, and 10 will work. So you have a 30% chance of success using a D10. And the more I'm talking about this, the more I like this idea, because you're not necessarily out to confront a great evil, if you will. Maybe you're not powerful enough to defeat the evil. Maybe all you need to do is go explore and find the runes that you need to empower in order to create the gateway for your deity. And that's a very, very interesting concept, because most of the time you're killing stuff anyways, but what's your character's motivation? Okay, if you're a cleric, you should be doing something for your god, in my opinion. And then you have the paladin trope. And the problem with the paladin trope is that there are people that work like inquisitors, there are people that work like exorcists, there are people that are literal champions, there are literal yeah, there's so many different types of paladin-like thing. There's samurai, and the idea that a class system is so rigid. No. Look at Hunter's X Hunter's NID system, minus the special. You have enhancers, you have transmuters, you have conjurers, you have emitters. Did I say that one already? And then you have something else. Yeah, okay, so anyways, but there's 5 different types of NIN users. Manipulators, yes, manipulators, conjurers, enhancers, emitters, and transmuters. And if you basically break down the powers you want for your game into those sort of categories, including like all of your level up effects, and then that way you can balance the game based on player choice. And maybe, since we're using a D10 for our system, maybe we want a maximum of 10 character levels. Maybe we want you to only be able to choose a number of abilities that are relevant to your growth chart. So, say you're an enhancer, you're not a very good conjurer, so maybe you only can have up to 2 conjure-like abilities. And what if the enhancer is the only one that gains additional health? And, have a major and a minor effect for each choice they get to make. And not connected. Don't connect them. Because what sort of advantage do I get? And then do I get another advantage? And then they gotta break it down where it's like, yeah, I can conjure a small bird that delivers messages. Right? That's a minor thing. How strong is it? It can carry a skeleton key or equivalent. Okay. So you can have it deliver an important scroll or something to your king or whatever. But the idea is that you do not have to utilize Dungeons and Dragons every time you want to do anything. Now, keeping track of monsters. Monsters should functionally work off of a very simple system. The damage check system. And this section is for game masters only. And, or not. If you're a player, go ahead and run it for yourself. Because one day you're going to want to run the game. And I'm going to tell you that Fate is an incredible resource. Because you can utilize Fate with literally any system. So they have the stress boxes, right? Give every character a number of stress boxes. Game Masters, section off the stress boxes. And you need 3 layers, right? And the first and second layer go all the way to more challenge. But that first, in each section, you have players are bored. Then in the next section, you have normal. And then in the next one, you have players need more challenge. And then when you drop down to the next one, if the players look bored, kill it off in this section, in the very first column. If the players need more of a challenge, carry it over. And then you have like 3 to 5 checkboxes per category. And this is for bosses, because you do not want your players to get bored. Otherwise, the game is ruined. Every 5 damage you deal, rounded down to 1, is 1 checkbox. Every success margin of at least 5 points. So let's say you need to roll a 3 to hit, and you rolled a 5, that's 2 technically. And then if you roll a 10, that's 3. Okay. Now, somehow your damage is calculated into that. So let's say you roll a 10 and you needed a 3. So you got your 3, you got your 5, you got your 10, and the damage you dealt was 15. Boom, there's 3 more. So you mark off 6 boxes. Right? Because every checkbox should be worth 5 health, rounded down. So if you could score 6, that's 2. If you score 9, that's 2. Plus whatever your success rate was. And the reason why you want to include success rate into your damage track is because if you roll really well to hit the thing, you hit it in a more critical area, or you perform some flourish that is more impactful. You need the narrative in the role-playing experience for it to be a role-playing experience. You can't be pure simulation. Some players would get bored. You can't be pure narrative. Some players will get bored. Breed the two. Make them have a wonderful experience, because that's your job. Your job, according to the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, is to create an environment and an engagement that reflects your table. Okay? The reason why there's a general rule book is because everybody needs someplace to start. And that's explained in the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide by Gary Gygax. You have the tools you need to create a game. And if you want to roleplay, that is a narrative experience. Everybody shares in the narrative experience. If you want to play a tactical skirmish game, that is not a role-playing game. But having rules to follow from the tactical experience meshed with the narrative experience gives you something like this. And I would recommend picking this up because the rules for carrying objects are very simple, but it's intuitive. If you have a bulky item, it doesn't really matter how heavy it is. It does to a certain extent, but then again, like the wind blows or you're trying to carry it through a cave or small area, and you have this carpet over your shoulder, it's hard to get it through the door. Like, you're going to have difficulties doing these things. And that is why you need a simple bulk system. Bulk is better than actual weight. And the reason for that is it's easy to keep track of. You can use 3x5 index cards to keep track of every single thing that a player or character has on them. Do not use the character sheet. Except for recording end of session notes on what they have. That way, you as the GM can just hand them a card that says what they obtained and how valuable it is. Doing that, you can pre-generate equipment out of something like this, and then that way they have all of the information they need to know about wrong book. Okay. Diablo is the one I was thinking of. Or you can use The Awakening, Diablo 2 The Awakening. So The Awakening is AD&D 2E, and To Hell and Back and Diablo Re is 3.0, the version of Diablo, for Dungeons and Dragons. So by having players have their index card handy, they know how much weight is on them because you have a little section in the corner to tell them how much bulk it is. And this is everything they have on them. And if you tell them how much bulk they have to work with, they will understand that, oh, look, I'm going to be over encumbered. Anybody else want this? And it's easier for you as the dungeon master or game master to keep track of that. That's super important. So there's 3 item sizes. You have a 1, a 3, and a 5 bulk in Ryutama. And it describes it as fits in your hand as 1, takes up an arm as 3, and takes up 2 hands as 5. Okay? And you have a rating that is 3 plus your strength score. And then I believe your level might have something to do with that too. And you can have pack animals or something. So that's a really cool system. And then have all the players lay out their items in the 1, 3, and 5 slot sections. And then that way, the dungeon master can be like, okay, I see you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15. You have 15 weight, you have 12 capacity. You're over encumbered. You need to reduce by 3. Okay, anybody want my shield? Who wants my shield? Okay. Oh, my pack animal has more carrying capacity on it. So that's a really handy process and tool to have. The next thing is the Talisman RPG, which I do not have yet, but I have it ordered and it should be in eventually. Thanks, 2020. If you watch the, what is it, How to Be a Great Game Master, Guy runs over the Talisman RPG, and he runs a couple sessions on it, and it's got a really cool companion system. Consider that. Look up How to Be a Great GM, and the Talisman RPG has a really good system for quick companion issues. So, run the game the way you want to run. Alright, and that's been a half hour. That's what I wanted to talk about. Cut one out, like, subscribe, share with your friends. Bye.